where I won't ever be able to see you again, but I do see some of you right now that I know. I am here against my better judgment. This is not my thing, and when Sara called me at 7 in the morning and suggested it was a good idea, I did give her a lot of reasons why it wasn't. But against my better judgment, I felt bad when she told me I was second choice and that the person they had chosen had followed through, so I didn't feel like I really had an option. That said, also, I have known them for 44 years and have never successfully moderated any conversation. So take that for what it is. I am supposed to tell you about myself. I am what I do, or what I did professionally. I was a therapist for many years of my life, and earlier before that worked with kids, so spent the majority of my life working with kids and mostly teenagers. So middle school teenagers were always my favorite people. They have a lot going on in their lives, and for any of you who are parents in here, I can't even imagine navigating the world that they're navigating right now, and the world that they're living in. It's pretty daunting to be a teenager. You know, you're figuring out who you are, and you're having intense relationships with your friends and fighting and, you know, carrying on. And what happens in middle school is that our cognitive development goes offline and our social and emotional development really takes off. And so our kids are going off to live in a world that none of us really understand or know. And now we've given them a cell phone, and they are carrying it around with the world in their hands, and now comparing themselves to not only their friends and the people at school, but everybody on the internet. It's a pretty tough place to grow up. But it was different in the 90s, and I thought maybe I would tell you a little bit about Tegan and Sara and who they were when I was parenting them, because this might be my only opportunity. And I feel like it's really been unfair. They've written and talked a lot about me, and now I'm going to talk a little bit about them. Also, many of their friends are here who I also feel like I co-parented, and I plan on making fun of them as well. You know, maybe what's important to start with is me and who I was as a teenager. My mother described me as angelic until I was 11. And then she said I turned into a monster. My mother was known to embellish stories much like her grandchildren, Tegan and Sara. And so I would take that with a grain of salt. However, she did send me to boarding school in middle school. She thought maybe the Catholic nuns would temper my behavior and change me. But unfortunately, she probably wasn't very successful. Or they weren't very successful at doing that. And so when the girls hit adolescence, I was like, I mean, who's going to be worse than I was? And I didn't, or I certainly thought that I had a handle on things. And for the most part, you know, they were charming and charismatic and smart and funny and opinionated and justice warriors and really, really had wonderful friends. And, but you hit middle school and they save their charm for other people. They don't, you know, want to charm you anymore unless they're wanting to go to a rave or have some more freedom. I will tell you one story that I remember in particular. I believe I was driving them, as I did often, to see Robin, who I know is here because I've heard your voice. We were having a giant argument, like screaming argument while I was driving the car, in the 90s in my Aerostar minivan. And at one point I thought I should probably pull over, so I pulled over the car and we continued to scream, and at one point I leaned over Sara, who was in the front seat, and opened the car door and then put my feet on her to launch her out of the minivan. And both of them at that point were like, "You're crazy!" and got out of the car, and I drove away, and I drove home, and I was hysterical. I was crying, and I called my mom, and my mom was like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "They're horrible. They're horrible people. I don't understand why they're doing this to me. I'm so sorry for everything I ever did to you. I can't believe how poorly I treated you. And she was like, can you be more specific? And I was like, I don't think so. And she was like, this is really actually not the apology I was hoping to get. And so, you know, in that place and time, my mom, who was very supportive, was probably gleeful when she got off the phone, celebrating that I was being tortured by my kids the way I had tortured her. And now I'm going to catch up on my cards and see where I'm at. I see the word junior high is daunting and overwhelming, and it was. But one of the really great things is that my kids had a wonderful group of people around them, wonderful parents who were parenting them, and we did our best to get through it. And the truth is that it's it takes a village. It really does. It takes a village to raise your kids, and I want to just like flip back because I have something I know that was really important that I want to say.
You're doing great, Mom.
Thanks. But one of the things that I think,
but don't forget we're here. So.
See, it's like they asked me to do something, and they're like, she's micromanaging me. And one of the things I wanted to add about what was more daunting, I think specifically for Tegan and Sara in the 90s, was that they were queer, and they were identical twins, and it was a lot to get through. And the reality was that we all got through it, and I'm super proud of them, and I'm super proud of me, and I know that we survived, and all of you also will survive your parenting. So we're actually here to talk about Crush, their awesome new book about fictional Tegan and Sara, junior high age Tegan and Sara. And I'm really excited to have them out and talk about it because I know that it's just one more vehicle for their awesome words and emotions that they share with their fans that make their fans feel like there's hope and there's people out there that they can look up to. So I want to bring them out, my two favorite crushes actually in the world, my kids, Tegan and Sara.
I think if we gave my mom a mic more often, she might become more popular than we are. Well, comedian, we learned it from her. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and we're really excited to talk about high school and Crush and these books. So thanks for that amazing intro, Mom.
Thank you.
You did great.
Thanks, guys.
Love the cue cards, by the way.
I'm going to read my question, okay? So
yeah,
just
please.
Don't take me off.
Nope.
All right.
Tegan looked at me. I was around the corner, so I couldn't see you, and she goes, she's already put the cards away. And I said, oh no, she's doing a Trump.
There. I know this is the second last stop of your book tour for Crush, and in addition to your book, your new documentary, Fanatical, came out on Disney on the weekend. You guys have done a lot over the last 2 years, include providing me with a grandson, Sarah and Casey. But when I look at you, I feel you've like aged exponentially.
Like physically?
Just generally, how are you doing?
Jesus. I actually thought
it's a lot.
Wait, was that aimed at Sarah because she had the kid?
No, it was aimed at both of you.
Oh, we were. Okay, yeah.
You had a baby. You just had Fanatical, so it's kind of like your baby.
I mean, I thought this morning, I was looking pretty good. Like, I was like, I look good. I look good for 44. Like, you know,
Yeah,
there's a lot of natural light in the hotel room, and I thought, I'm happy with how I look, you know?
I think I was meaning more the like, oh my God, my back.
Yes,
my
well,
hips.
I've definitely been complaining about my physicality since
Yeah.
my early 20s, and I've done little about it. But Tegan did admit the other day at one of our book events that she has never had a massage. No, I did say I've never had a massage. I said we were talking about writing a list of things that you're scared of. Yeah.
To do.
And I said, well, I
See you.
I only go get a massage if I'm in extreme pain, but then I know that I should do it regularly. That's actually what I said.
Oh, okay.
Well, I've only had one facial in my entire life, and I feel like
You're flawless.
no, but I'm saying like I want to lean into that. Like as I get older, I want to take better care of myself.
Yeah.
Like I'm realizing I've hit that age. Like your 20s are all about survival. Your 30s are about like expanding your universe and like climbing to the top and competition. And 40s are all about self-care for me.
And 40s for me are not going to be about self-care because I now have a child. So
Yeah. So I'm gonna just look
Good luck
like
with
me.
that.
recently I bought a whole like a thing of strawberries from the farmer's market, and I realized that Sid ate every single strawberry except for one strawberry that I allowed myself. And I don't say this as like a pity thing. I just it's actually making me feel really happy to like give him
All the
all of
stuff.
those things. And sometimes I will think like, God, I told Sid to drink water so many times today and I have not had any water. Or, Sid will be upset about something and I'll be like working through it emotionally with him and I'll think like, I need to do this with myself more. Like, what am I upset about? Like, let's talk about it. Let's take some breaths, Sarah. Like, there's all these lessons that I'm learning in my 40s, which is that I'll probably save for my 60s. So,
So you're doing great.
I'm doing great. Yeah, I feel really good, and I feel really. We told ourselves we would never release 2 projects at the same time ever again after we put out our album and our TV show High School, and now here we are putting out a scary documentary and a really lovely, aspirational, sweethearted graphic novel for children at the same time in the same 2 weeks. So it's if I look tired or I have bags under, if the light is catching in the dark circles beneath my eyes,
You look great.
you're not seeing things.
So I just want to start with this question. In addition to your music, your community building, and your activism work, I really feel like you made a commitment to making sure that your story, your queer story, is shared. You began doing this with your memoir, High School, and that went on to become a TV show, as you just said. Then you followed that work up with your first graphic novel, Junior High. Now you've got the sequel, Crush, which seems to extend that work by telling the story of fictional junior high age Tegan and Sara navigating life as queer musicians, coming of age in today's world. Why are you telling these stories, or why has telling these stories been so important to you guys?
Well, we've been going down the path of looking at a lot of archival video and interviews from our early career, including when we were in high school, which we'll see a little bit of in a bit. But I think we were just always so us right from the beginning. I think it's not even an intentional thing. It's almost unintentional that we just always have to insert a lot of our own story into our art. I wish sometimes we could be more opaque and mysterious about our music. I wish people weren't so interested in knowing the details about our songs, because the true intention with our music is for you to create a soundtrack for your life. I want you to attach to it. You should care more about what you feel than what I felt when I made it. But that's always just been a part of our experience as public people, is that people have done that, but then they've immediately turned around and been like, but what were you feeling and what did you think and what happened to you that made you want to share this experience? And so I think Sarah and I have just embraced that. There's seems to be an organic interest in who we are and our experience, and I'm really glad that we have the opportunity in all these different mediums now to mine ourselves, to share that. Sometimes I do feel bad for our family and our friends that we constantly return to the past and do that, but I do think there's value in revisiting your past and reprocessing it, and I hope that by osmosis we're all getting a bit of like healing, because we're going back to these times that a lot of people don't want to return to, and doing it for them.
One thing that came up too when we were writing High School was the parts of our life, especially the early parts of our life, that we had sort of briefly talked about in the press. I wanted to make sure that there was sort of a record of what really happened, even if it's slightly embellished or fictionalized, because the version that's out there, it in some ways, I don't think it was intentional, but the media or the press or the sort of like context that it's in is from 25 years ago, so I don't know if I want the early origin story of how our band started to be from clippings from, news media 25 years ago. Like I do, and I know that sounds maybe maybe the first thought is like, who cares about all of that? But from an archival perspective, it's been really nice to just put our story on record, so that I don't know, so that if someone were to be so interested that they wanted to go back and look, they wouldn't just find that one example. And the sort of idea of self-mythologizing, some people find it a bit narcissistic, and all I can say to that is you have to be kind of narcissistic to do this. I don't know, I bet a lot of artists and writers and people, if you're not a little bit into yourself and fascinated by yourself, why would you do this? It's just, so I'm completely coming out as this, I don't think it's the bad kind, I don't know if there's a good kind of narcissist, but I'm definitely on the low grade narcissism scale, and I feel fine about it.
I wonder if it's also fair to say that by having that record, that you're actually providing queer kids who don't have a lot of access to stories about other queer kids,
Totally.
An opportunity to kind of look towards you as somebody who maybe has had experiences that might be valuable for them.
Yes,
to see you
you definitely have to, I will say, Sarah's right, all of what she said is true, but I do think there is still, we can't convince ourselves that the world has changed so dramatically that we don't need queer stories.
Sure, I agree.
The reality is, look at the news, look at what's happening here in Alberta, look what's happening across the continent, and the second you step off this continent, there's still such a, it's just troubling what's still happening to LGBTQ people, and so especially our young people, we need to create content for them, and we know that, and we've always known that, and I think before we even knew it consciously, subconsciously we understood that by being out and by being comfortable with our sexuality, even before we were, being comfortable with it in the media, before we were actually physically comfortable with it, was not a question, it just had to be. So I think that's been an amazing thing about Crush in junior high. We talk about it a lot with our collaborator, Tillie Walden, who's been she's a queer person and she's been making queer books for a long time. And her books are banned all across the US in tons of states. And when we were putting out junior high, she's like, get ready, your book's gonna be banned in libraries in 12 different states. And I just thought, well, that's a really good reason for us to keep making stuff like this.
I agree. I also kind of love that you chose to modernize your story. And to examine the major milestones most kids experience, maybe not all, from bullying, crushes, getting your first period in junior high. Why in Crush did you decide to change some of the significant details, specifically letting Tegan and Sara lose Garage Warz, the contest that you actually won in high school that kind of launched your career?
I mean, I look at this as two questions, because one of the reasons why we wanted to modernize this was because our publishers really saw an opportunity to, center our story in not as nostalgia, as an opportunity to just tell a story that, would be inspirational or aspirational to kids now. What we found in writing in a modern perspective is that it's not as big a stretch as we thought. I mean, a lot of the pressures that young Tegan and Sara face, specifically with, their crushes or how much of themselves to reveal publicly as they start to sort of soft launch their career, how much of themselves to put on the internet, the dynamics with their parental figures, and, the amount of independence versus, supervised or protective kind of relationship they have with their family and minders. Those are all things we still deal with today. And I don't know if that makes us, sort of trapped a little Arrested Development. We still talk about, just as an example, when I had my kid, do I talk about that publicly? Is that a thing I want to do? Well, I do, because I don't want to hide it. And also I want to be representative of queer parenting and, a queer public figure with a child. But, oh my God, I do not want to put my kid on the internet in a way that will make them feel exploited or unsafe or whatever. So these, even though the actual topical things in the book that we cover around social media and identity and what of yourself to reveal publicly and what to keep personally is sort of, for a kid, those are things that we think about all the time. So it actually made it sort of easy to kind of get into the headspace. And then, you know, sort of the question of like why change, what to change, and you know, what to make fictional and what not to make fictional. I think Tegan has given me credit. I don't quite remember this. We actually wrote the script for this book a number of years ago, but Tegan says that it was me that decided, you know, it would be fun to write that Tegan and Sara lose. And I think for us it just was like a natural sort of consequence that would be interesting to see, like what would these characters do. And I think, you know, probably didn't realize it at the time, but I really struggled with the early launch of our career, and probably there was some kind of like fantasy for me in like, well, what would my life have been like if we hadn't won Garage Warz? What if it had taken longer? Would we still have been successful? And we talked about this in Vancouver, but you know, I think my answer would have been like, I don't know, maybe if the right things hadn't fallen in place, maybe we would have gone on to do something different. You and Tegan ganged up on me and said that we were absolutely we were too talented. We would have figured it out another way. I'm trying to accept
I don't
that.
think I used the word too talented. I said much too excited by that.
You said you were too confident. Tegan was like, oh, we're motherfucking
we're
doing
doing
this.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think a loss would have changed much.
Anyways, it was just fun to write what it would have been like. And you know, maybe there's something healing too. Like when we found the archival footage from actual Garage Warz, where our friends were there and you and Dad and Bruce and everybody were there, the thing that struck me, we're sort of in the distance, you know, on stage, but the camera is placed at the center where our friends and family are, and the feeling, the sound of you all, your disbelief that we won, you know, like Dad does like a whoop, like he does this big like cheer, and then Dad and Bruce's, our dad and our stepfather they're excited. Like that's what I hear when I watch the video. We're off in the distance. You can't really, you know what we're thinking or feeling. And you know, that's such an overwhelming thing to watch, because the pride, the excitement, the sort of like unbelievable like reaction is, you know, there's always a, oh my God, but what if this is all over? What if we don't win? What if we fail? What if the record bombs? What if people hate it? What if people don't like us? You know, that's, you know, when you have early success or you have people like you or accept you, there's always this sort of daunting otherness of, well, but what if it's not that way? And I think it's like, it's a safe place to try out what would happen if we, you know, weren't immediately successful.
I think one of the other things I thought about when I read the book was how great it was that you gave junior high age Tegan and Sara time, the message, it's okay to not do it all. Like, you don't have to do that right now. You can be a teen, you can have crushes, you can have a girlfriend, you can worry about the kids at summer camp, you can go do those things, and this is still potentially going to be waiting for you. I really love that. That was really, and I, you know, having worked with kids are in such a hurry. You'll say to them, you don't have to take an extra class. And they would say to me, but Sonia, if I don't, I'll be behind everybody else. Yeah. They're in such a hurry to get it done. And I love the message that we don't have to do it right now.
Well, I think it's so great that you're pointing that out, because I think it's a real theme in Crush, is that, I mean, because it's so thematic of today, is you do not have to be exceptional at something just because you like it. You don't have to put it on the internet and monetize it just because you're good at it. And I think that it was really important for us, because I'm not saying that anyone put pressure on us to do that when we were young, but we were ill-equipped to deal with what happened to us between ages of 17 and 25.
100%.
Like, yeah, I know 25-year-olds today who I wouldn't trust to make me a dinner reservation, but at 25, we were spinning the globe 2 times a record cycle.
Yeah, without a credit card and a cell phone.
Yeah, like, you know, we were on towards 17. I mean, it's absolutely harrowing when I think about our first handful of tours crossing Canada on the Greyhound bus, just Sara and I alone.
Yeah.
You know, I feel concerned. Last night, Sara and I went to get a bite to eat, and we're walking back, and like, you know, in the dark, and I'm thinking to myself, like, God, we used to just walk around, like we went everywhere in Calgary as teenagers alone, you know. It's just such a different world now, and our awareness of it is so different. So it was really important in Crush to reassure the young people they can still be young, and also to make the parents a little more protective. And that is not a judgment of parenting. We just grew up in such a different time, you know. You guys barely even use seatbelts. It's crazy. Your generation is fucking nuts.
It was fucking nuts. You know, I'm going to move us to what I hear is section 2.
Yeah.
Okay, am I doing a good
What's
job?
that? Yeah, like are we broadening?
It's
the
like
scope?
the 90s thing. We're supposed to potentially talk about this.
Yeah, good job, Mom.
And I do want to say one thing about this, and in response to what you just said, is that I was really busy in the 90s. I was single parenting. I was working full time and going to university. And my partner, Nora, who I think is here in the audience, and I were talking last night.
Not a gay partner.
Well, no, my work partner, my work wife. My work
I just
wife.
want to clarify, that's all.
I mean, she could have been.
Why don't you write a book about it? Fictionalize it. I think that would be a great topic.
Anyway, we were talking about it, and you know, I realized that I had such high expectations of my kids and of myself. But in retrospect, blessed by the books that have shown me all of the ways in which I wasn't in charge. Supervision was low in our house. There was a lot of independence. There was a lot of encouragement to be independent and a lot of freedom to make your own decisions. And so I was thinking about, you know, culturally we've really shifted. We went to helicopter parents and then hummingbird parents. I don't know, Sarah, I'm sure you're like the attachment parenting style is what you're hearing about.
Tired is that one? That's
Yeah.
one.
But yeah, there was a lot going on in the 90s for
Well, I was gonna
everybody.
say, you say there was a lot of independence, but one of the things that comes up every time we put this on the screen, and I feel a lot of pride about it, is that in a lot of these pictures we're wearing your clothes, and you know, like for example, I really, really like getting into the mindset of like Tegan and Sara at 15, I think we're 14 or 15, going to visit Santa. That's not done ironically, we wanted to do that every year. And I chose to wear a Take Back the Night shirt, your Take Back the Night shirt, and
We were taking back the night with Rosemary, Joanne, and Leah.
we were
We're
taking back the
sitting
night
there.
and probably let Santa know we were hoping for, you know, just an equitable future for all LGBTQ and women around the world. I don't know. Who knows what I asked for that year? But one of the things that I really love about this is, Kate, I know you already know the answer to this, but you had this picture up on the left-hand side. You know, Tegan and I weren't necessarily joiners once we hit junior high. I remember being on the basketball team, but I think that was, I don't think we were very good. I mean, I know we were terrible, and I think we just did it because we wanted to be social. But it was really shocking when Tegan included this picture in this spread, because I thought to myself, well, what club is that? You know, they would sort of cluster the kids together based on sports or interests or whatever. And anyways, I stared at because it was out of context. It was just like that. And then I looked at the picture a little longer and I realized, oh, that's all the twins that went to our junior high. And specifically, Tegan dated one of each of these sets of twins. And
the younger brother.
And the younger brother of one side of the twins. And I thought to myself, no one can accuse me of not attempting to figure out if I was gay or not. It is true. It's changed a little bit over the last 25 years, but one of the most common things a man will say when they find out you are lesbian is, you haven't met the right man yet. And I'm like, boy, but God, did we try. Like, we really tried, you know? Anyways, in this case, I thought to myself, what an interesting photo. I wonder if there was any awkwardness, if there was any dissent when we were asked to pose for this photograph. I want to point out that I am also wearing a political shirt in that twins photo. I'm wearing a shirt that says "There is no difference," which was from the Calgary Sexual Assault Center. And I just think to myself, what did our teachers think was going on with us? They didn't ask, but I wonder if they were like.
You also had a no means no t-shirt.
Oh yeah, no. I had to vary this photo selection because I'm wearing political shirts in so many of the photos. I was like, can we find one of me not? And then we've got the I have an attitude or whatever, which was Bruce's shirt. But I did throw those photos of us in the pajamas because I was like, we were still sweet, but we were mostly assholes by this age. Like, but this was a tough stretch of time, especially for me. I'll say, laughs aside, I will say that grade 8 was hands down the worst year that I can think of as an adolescent. I had like particularly bad skin that year. which I thought was an external reflection of how upset and cystic I was inside. But it was just like a brutal year friend-wise for us. And just, I think probably hormonally was probably the most brutal year. And that was also really exciting to go back and crush and just write the more sweeter sides, because I do have sweet memories too. A lot of the things I remember from our childhood was laughing a lot in our house. We were a very funny and sarcastic family, even amidst the sadness sometimes. But it was hard to find photos where I did not just like be like, oh God, like we were impossible to love. But you know who wasn't?
That is not true.
You! Look at you in 8th grade. Look at this. Want to tell us a little bit about you? What were your interests? You were in boarding school in Saskatchewan.
We used to sneak out and meet the boys.
Very boy-centric and you're at that age for you.
Probably tried some psychedelics.
Yeah, people nowadays are like, I hope my kid doesn't have too much screen time. I'm like, I mean, our generation was like, I hope my kids don't do acid at school. Same age group.
I mean, I think I felt really good in boarding school. It was all girls. So.
Were you popular? Was it big? Like, get set the scene.
There were 80 girls from grade 7 to 12, so it wasn't very big. I think there were about 10 kids in my class every year. And the older girls would take the younger girls under their wings when they came in, and you would be their grad assistant. And I always got chosen to be a very popular grade 12 girls grad assistant because I was really good at sneaking out and coming back with hickies on my neck.
Okay.
That's what was happening.
Yeah.
I can't make
You know the story that how we did this graphic novel series was when we did our deal for our memoir, high school, the publisher's kids department asked if we were interested in, why can't I not think of the word for what we did? Adapt our high school experience into a middle grade age book. And we were like, sure, sounds good. Like, we just love to work. So we were like, sounds good. But we didn't actually start work on it for 2 years. By that point, we picked Tillie Walden to collaborate with, who is just this exceptional artist who has just unbelievable books and is a twin and queer and is like, I feel like we're so obsessed with her, we might kidnap her. With 3 of us just agreed 2 nights ago in New York to go to college together, since none of us have gone to college. We've decided we're gonna go to college. I can't wait to pick which state we're gonna do that in. But anyway, we agreed to do this book and had no idea what it entails to do a graphic novel. I mean, quite sincerely, I gave it 0 thought, which says a lot about me. I just was like, yes, and then put it in the back of my mind, and then the publisher got in touch with us, and our editors sent us a box with some graphic novels for middle grades and just said, like, read these, this is the tone and age, and here's a script that you have to write a script, which I was like, oh God. And so I built a PowerPoint presentation of our real life.
Of course you did.
Yeah, grade 8 experience, and I was like, we went, it's like was laid out. I had photos, visuals, the whole thing. I'm like, we grew up in the northeast of Calgary, grew up by Marble Mall. This was our junior high. We started to experiment with drugs and smoking and boyfriends, and like there was gangs, and I laid it all out. Like, and the publishers called like a meeting with us, and they're like, they went to the Zoom. They're like, this is terrifying. We don't want any of this in there. This is a book for children. And I was like for kids the age that we were in junior high. And I'm like, well, that's what we did in junior high. And they're like, we don't want them to know any of those things. Kids are different now. And I was like, are they?
That's called attachment parenting.
Sure. But anyway, in any case, it was really fun to get to focus on not those things, but we did have to process the fact that there were so many things, there was so much pressure, and there were so many things going on. All of this to say that it's been really fascinating to cross this country and America and meet preteens and teens who are reading this book and are having this experience and are in school, because I want to warn all of you that when I'm alone with them, they are like, this stuff is happening, and it's really scary and overwhelming, and do you have advice? And I'm glad, I think these books are way sweeter than some of the things that they're going through, but I also think it's good to stay in touch with that sweet side, because I'm sure you were a badass in boarding school, but I'm sure you're also very sweet and polite, and the nuns kept you in line, and
Yeah.
you got that story about crying into the blanket. I did grandma. I mean, there was a nice person inside.
Yeah, there was.
You know,
Yeah,
we can be both things.
yeah, we could be both things. I was gonna say, you made me think of something about your, it doesn't matter.
Do you want me to move forward?
You can move it forward.
Well, this is the section that Sarah and I are going to turn the camera on you.
Okay.
So part of the joy of having you as moderator when Sarah called me to tell me that she'd asked you to do these events was I wanted to be able to ask you about things you remember. Obviously for Crush we take adult Tegan and Sara storylines around the early part of our career and we fictionalize them and modernize them for the book. But it's our memory. I'm curious what your memory is, specifically about one of the storylines in the book, which is that we play this battle of the bands, and unlike in real life where we won the battle of the bands and launched our career when we were 17, in the book, Gunk, which is Tegan and Sara's fictional band, they enter and they lose the contest. But they end up getting a manager and they go on this journey in Crush. But I'm curious what it felt like, or what you remember from us winning and the weeks that followed that win and that sort of whirlwind of attention that came to us. Like, are there things that you remember about that time?
Well, you know, I do think that I maybe didn't anticipate that you would win because you were up against all the university-aged adult people, and you were, you know, 17 at the time. And so there was a conversation about the fact that you might not even be able to participate because you were underage and everything was happening in the bars at the different colleges at SAIT.
That's actually one of my favorite drawings from the book, is where Tegan and Sara arrive at the Battle of the Bands and Tillie drew us like behind a stanchion and
Yeah,
like,
well, you were.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we're standing
well
there like
as-
embarrassed, and one of us says to the other one like it's something like, do we just have to stand here all night? And we're just like standing pathetic next to the stage because it was a bar.
Yeah, well, and that's really what happened. You had to wait outside until you played. And it wasn't that I didn't have faith in you. I mean, we all thought you were terribly talented, that you were, you know.
She was gonna say terrible.
No, that you guys
Picked this moderator.
we were very, we had a lot of faith in you. I can remember your dad coming over to get you one day, and we were standing at the bottom of the stairs, and you guys were playing music, and we both kind of looked at each other and were like, "You're good, right?" And Steve was like, "Yeah, I think so," and I was like, "Yeah, maybe, hey." So, you know, as a parent, you kind of recognize at some level that maybe you're more infatuated with your kids when you recognize other people are not as infatuated by your kids than you are. So, you know, I was like, you know, there was a margin of error for me. I was like, maybe, maybe not. So when you won, I mean, it was just insane. I mean, I don't, you know, there was no example of something like that happening to us. And
Did you feel overwhelmed or worried for us?
I mean, it was in the heat of the moment. It was just exciting, and all of a sudden I realized there were a lot of people thrusting business cards in your hands and in our hands, and a lot of the more serious people were coming over and speaking to me and saying, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about your kids," or "Hey, you know, I'm an agent, I'm a lawyer, I'm with this record company, etc." And I was just like, "What is happening?" Like,
I'm curious, I'm gonna play a clip from one of the first, we did this like maybe a week, this interview, I'm just gonna play a little bit of the clip, but it's like a week after we won Garage Warz. We were studying for final exams, we had, you know, math tutors, like we were just barely scraping by. Like, was there any part of you that was like, this is too distracting and I just want them to focus on graduating? Like, do you remember anything about that?
well, you know, I mean, the morning after it happened, I told you guys this in Vancouver, but Mike Bell, who wrote for the Calgary Sun and I think Calgary Herald,
At the time it was fast forward.
at the time it was fast forward, but at the time it was fast forward, and he was one of the people that
NBC fact checker here.
and he was one of the people who actually came up and spoke to me and gave me his card and said, "If you need anything, let me know." And he seemed like an unbiased kind of like didn't need anything from us. And the next day I went to work. I was working at Hera, where I worked with some of my friends that are here. And I remember closing my office door and calling him and saying, "What is happening? Like, I don't understand what happened." And him saying, "You know, this is really exciting." And I was like, "What do I do with all of this?" And he said, "You know, take your time." He actually really helped me to slow down. And he did connect me with somebody in Winnipeg who gave us advice, and it eventually led to your first lawyer. And what I realized was that there was no way I was going to sign anything for you guys, and that you would have to graduate from high school, and that you wouldn't be allowed to sign a document until you turned 18, which was in September. So we did have some control over that next few months. But there was a day I came home from work and the girls had went and met with a lawyer downtown without talking to me about it. And I called the lawyer and reprimanded him and said, how dare you speak to two underage kids without parental sort of support in the room? So it did throw us off balance for a while.
You weren't gonna stop these two.
I wasn't.
Hold on. Thinking about it. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. The only thing that can stop us is if the PowerPoint presentation freezes. Yeah, hold on.
There she goes, you guys. Multi-hyphenated artist, Tegan Quinn. She's not just a musician and a writer. Doesn't just develop documentaries about stalkers. She's also a tech.
It's springtime in high schools in Calgary, and thoughts are starting to turn toward final exams, graduation, and summer jobs. But for 17-year-old twins, Sara and Tegan Quinn, their thoughts are starting to turn toward a career in music. This is where it all began 2.5 years ago, writing songs and learning how to play guitar. And it might have stayed here if the twins hadn't entered Garage Warz, an annual fight to the finish between rockers and punk bands.
We're like two little 17-year-old kids sitting up there and saying what we want to say, and we don't have nothing to hide behind. And maybe that's what the difference is that, I mean, the music industry, getting up on stage, going in front of people you don't know, saying things that you wrote down to yourself, that's very, very, very intimidating.
They earned higher...
Okay, it really hates this,
The internet really lets us down sometimes.
Yeah, it's totally fine. All that happens next, I'm actually kind of sad that it froze there, is that you see my mom in her Jeep parked out in front of the high school, and that really breaks my heart. But,
Well, why I was there is because I had to carry the guitar home, because otherwise they'd have a fight and leave it in the street.
well, yeah. Also, technically we didn't have our driver's licenses, but yes, that's all true. You did usher us around over those next couple weeks quite a bit, and this is something we put in the book, is that one of the results of Gunk, Tegan and Sara's band, losing is that they still end up landing a manager. And this manager in the book, for those who haven't read it yet, but I hope you'll all get the book, we signed them and they're for sale here tonight. Her name is Ramona Keys. Well, the other day, you're looking at me like I'm an idiot, but I kept calling her Ramona Singer, and everyone was like, that's a Real Housewife of New York, and I was like, oh yeah. I wasn't looking at you like an idiot, I just was thinking perimenopause when you said that's all. So Ramona Keys becomes Gunk's manager, and the first thing she does is suggest that they change their name to Tegan and Sara, which is our first manager immediately was like, you should call your band Tegan and Sara, not Sara and Tegan, because you have to enunciate Tegan and Sara, so it's clearer what you're saying. But the first opportunity that comes of this failed performance is that they go and do a photo shoot. And so I did want to bring up that I wanted to ask you again more just of your reflections on, like, you know, in the weeks that followed, we got all this press and there were like a lot of things that happened. Like first we got all this press, which brought a lot of attention to us, which was weird. And then I immediately quit my job at Grab a Jabba. I was all like, I'm gonna be famous. Go fuck yourself. I will not be working on this piece of shit place anymore. Sorry. It wasn't called Grab a Jabba. That was my next job when music didn't work out initially. I was actually working at Robin's Donuts. So
You were at the Canadian Tire.
at the Canadian Tire. And no one cared when she quit, but when I handed my resignation in at Robin's Donuts, I actually got Tegan's job at a different Robin's Donuts. We couldn't work at the same location. My manager was devastated, and that's not an exaggeration. He had a bright future in donuts. He told me he saw major management potential, which was, it was actually, it was a huge compliment, because up until that point, I mean, it was a big month for me. Like, adults had awarded us, you know, first place in this contest, and then now another adult was telling me I had management potential. And
I
was
think
like,
probably the reason he loved you was because I had trained you to clean toilets, and so
He
you were
thought
able to clean the toilet.
the man was astounded by my mopping skills. Again, not exaggeration. I still remember this almost 29 years later. I remember the first time I mopped the floors, he came over to me and said, "Who taught you how to do that?" And I was like, is this complicated? I've actually introduced the mop to a number of ex-girlfriends of mine when we first started dating. So anyway, sorry, that's tangent.
The next section.
It was a huge month for me. I remember thinking to myself, after months of, or sort of years of sort of feeling a bit invisible, you know, in my academic pursuits, you know, the rare teacher would sort of see, "Thank you for your laughter," but I remember feeling like quite invisible. There were so many other students who were smarter than me or faster than me or whatever.
Harder workers
faster
than
than
you.
I don't know, like in like PE class, like I don't know, I just felt myself diminishing, sort of like, you know, disappearing in school and in life, and the only conflict, or sorry, the only contact I had with adults was generally ones of conflict, where it was like, work harder, run faster, go apply to college, you loser, like, you know, like those kinds of things. So to finally,
That
like,
was me.
to have, you know, to win the contest and then to have an adult tell me, beg me, honestly, to stay in his employment. Seriously, he was like, he used to have me come, even when it wasn't my shift, I would come after school, and I was allowed to change out the cash register. I was allowed access to the safe, and I was allowed to change the cash
You
register.
had keys at one
I
point.
had keys, and he was just like, he begged me basically to stay working.
They couldn't keep their own keys and often locked themselves out of the house, but MacaDonald's gave them.
Yeah, like he didn't know I was what a huge loser I was and how unreliable I was. And as I was saying to him, like, no, seriously, I'm done. And we were on the cover of, you know, Vox, and we were, you know, he had seen these things, like he was very like, oh, this is exciting for you, and I was like, I've got a career ahead, like I gotta get going. And then he was like, he looked at me and he said, you could have had a franchise of Garage Warz. Like, that's the future. And I was like, are you fucking serious? I hate coffee. No, and I love coffee. And actually, the other day I said I could totally open a coffee shop. Like, I thought to myself, this might be my post.
It was aspirational.
So if the guy that owns
Well,
that
I
Robin's
ran-
Donuts is out there, I'm looking to franchise or just start a new idea. I don't know. Get in touch. The woman who ran by Robin's Donuts, who was technically my boss, I'll never forget when I came in to quit. She had her feet up on like a overflowing garbage can in the middle of this little kiosk, like Robin's Donuts and Canadian Tire, and I think I brought the Vox with me. I was like, "This is what's up, lady. I'm out." And she like looked up and was like, "Just take your name off the schedule." That's it. So,
You
But I
also
wanna talk-
couldn't get a job at McDonald's.
no, I couldn't get a job anywhere. I was a piece of shit loser. Anyway, within months I had to get a new job, and I worked at A&B Sound, Center Mall. So there you go. Our start in the music career really was there. But I want to move forward, just being cognizant of time, and just talk about like all of this is like sort of bringing up that there's this perception, and I think we really try to focus on that and crushes that. You know, in our real life, people were so excited for us and were so thrilled about all this early success. And there was this one-way sort of conversation that was happening where people were meeting us and going, oh my God, you must be so excited. You must be having such a good time. You must be so thrilled. You're living your dream. There were all these projections. And that was partly true, but both of us experienced the beginnings of like an enormous amount of anxiety and inability to express it because we felt guilty. Like we felt like if we complain or we talk about how scared we are or overwhelmed we are, or in Sarah's case, just plain and simply like she just wasn't entirely sure this is what she didn't know if she wanted to actually be a musician as a career. We felt like we had to keep quiet about that, and there was many years where we sort of, not to be overly dramatic, kind of suffered a little in silence because
You suffered a lot.
we just felt so bad. We didn't want to seem like ungrateful for this early success and didn't know quite how to change or like modulate the
No,
everything was a
circumstances.
yes. If people asked us to do something, it was yes. So in the book, we give Tegan and Sara a lot of room to express their conflict around having differences of desires, and also an enormous amount of encouragement from the parental figures in the book to take our time. But I wanted to bring up that Tegan and Sara do eventually write a song. They collaborate with an older girl named DJ Kukumber, and they write a song called Crush, and Tegan gets her first crush on DJ Kukumber, and they end up doing a music video. And at the music video, their idol, which is like a Calgary superstar named Night Fever, shows up to cameo in the video and gives Tegan and Sara some advice, which was something that we were like so desperate for when we were that age. I'm wondering if you have any memories of our first music video. Like, did we ask for advice? Did you help style us? Like, I'm gonna play a clip of it. I'm just wondering, like, what? Say no. We don't want to be responsible.
Yeah, like
for
what
what's-
responsibility do you have for what ended up being? Do you remember anything about this? Were you excited? Were you like, my God, my girls are off to make a music video and they're gonna be on Much Music? Like, do you remember seeing it? Were you thrilled? Were you horror stricken by the choices we made?
I do remember you going off to make a music video. You made it in Toronto, and the only thing I remember organizing is finding you a place to stay and getting Bruce's family involved because they lived there. And yeah, I mean, at that point, I think, you were making your own decisions. I didn't get a lot to say. At some point, you were like, "You're fired. It's good. We're good." But I remember seeing the music video, and I remember seeing it on MTV and being extremely excited.
Much Music.
Oh yes, it was Much Music, sorry. Yeah.
Apologize to Much Music. Now it's just a TikTok. It's a TikTok account.
But I do remember.
It's your fault. You didn't watch it.
I was a big fan of the song, and I was really excited that you were making it. And you guys were pretty cheeky in the video. You seem to have a lot of confidence.
Let's find out. Hopefully this plays. If it doesn't.
Stand up, sit down, baby. Gonna be a formal dress down heyday. We decide when I'll go downtown. How about you and me, we go get wasted. Why don't we get wasted? Please, excuse me. You have to excuse me. It's been our first time. By definition, from grade school to study, we quietly become strong so early. Take it or leave it. They can't believe it. They go from kindergarten to killing springs. They go from heartache to inner peace. I'm gonna put sailors 100% to sea. He said, let's leave this between you and me. My cat watch myself leave my house between you and me. The cat bird goes like, what did you see? What did you see? Tell me, baby, how's it feel?
Some brief thoughts on that. We'll start with you, Sara.
Well, it's look who's moderating.
Yeah, well, just you can't help it, Mom. I don't know what. It's just. Do you even know how much time is left?
No, I told you exactly.
Do you know what time we started? I doubt it. Let's just brief thoughts on the video. Hey, I'm just Tim Walls, and I know who I work for. So I remember things slightly differently than Tegan about the first. I remember this age, we wrote songs, we had boundless energy. We wrote songs every day, sometimes more than one song. Like we were so inspired. It was all I thought about. It was what I wanted to do. It was just amazing. And so one of the things that when I go back and listen to this music, which I find very hard to do, for lots of reasons that I've tried to like push through because it's just, I actually try to sort of like, I marvel at the confidence of us at that age and our ability to synthesize and like be both affected and inspired and then synthesize that and make a song and then, just record it and put it out there and be very brave about it, like not overthink it, like the kind of, the sort of like, I don't know, just the energy, the propulsion to move forward just with our ideas and our thoughts. I'm amazed by it. And one of the things that I'm really struck by this song, which I actually think is a banger, is first of all, Tegan should have been in like a 21 Pilots type band. She should have been rapping. I mean, there may be people have thoughts about that if she was good or not, but she clearly has a lot to say, and I just don't think singing a few like opaque lyrics was ever good enough for Tegan. She wanted to tell you the whole story. And then tell you it again, just to make sure you heard. But the thing that strikes me about this song, and I think about it in the context of young artists today and how they are so candid and transparent and honest, and they are so unfiltered. And this was a very brief part of our career where we were still very unfiltered and angry. And we were happy to tell you exactly what we thought and how pissed we were about everything. And I think as a result of feeling like that would, our career and the opportunities would be taken away from us, we learned how to be more disciplined and media trained, and that's fine. Like, this is not me lamenting, I'm glad I'm not like 44 years old screaming into the abyss, like on TikTok or whatever, but we did learn that, because the response to this, while our parents or our friends and some, fans liked it, the response from the media and from people who would see us in those early days was repulsion. Men hated our anger. Men hated us being little girls and yelling about whatever, Columbine or feminism. And that was what we faced in those first, handful of years. And I didn't know quite how to contextualize it at that age. I just knew that when we would sing, there was this immediate need to, critique us and be, put off by us. There was the most common thing that we got was just like, what do you have to be so angry about? Why are you so angry? There was always that. So when I watch that video, that's what I think about. I think about us singing that song and singing it not in a feminine way. Like, I hate the way we sing in the song, but it's like, we learned how to stop doing that. We learned to stop growling and sounding masculine, actually. We also learned that I should not wear turtlenecks short necks like that. Yeah, so turtlenecks aren't great for us. Just a teeny little head on a pair of shoulders. You want to add any thoughts? I'm going to give you a 1 minute time limit.
I think that was an amazing song, and I actually think that what you were writing about, which you talked about, included a break-in into our house where you walked in, there were robbers in our house. There was a lot going on at that time, and you did have a lot to say. There was a lot of people that listened as well, and clearly not just in a negative way, but in a positive way.
Totally, yeah. I mean, it's easy to focus on. Of course, there was lots of positive thoughts, but like when I hear that video, my physical reaction to be is because I learned to feel like when we were that version of ourselves, we were provocative, we were combative, we would go into, specifically on that album, we were touring with artists like Neil Young, and we were playing in front of audiences that were predominantly older and male, and it was a fight. And I would, for a lot of my career, in the beginning of it, I would think why do people love playing music? Like, when I have to play a show, I'm filled with dread and trepidation, and I want the show to be over. And it's like, I don't know, maybe because the first 10 years we were getting on stage and we were ready for a fight. We were always in a state of will people hate us or will they tolerate us? And that's how it felt. Not in front of our own audience, although, then that's a whole other part of our career where we were really popular and we were, that's a different kind of processing thing or whatever. But I think the music is great. It's just that my first reaction is always to be like, oh God, did we have to be so intense? Something else that's very intense is when you get a crush on somebody, and so great transition about that. Great.
So I actually know your first crushes, and I think are they both here tonight or today? Well, I love them almost as much as I love you guys, and I did unknowingly host their hookups, so got to know them.
She provided a safe space.
But there was a lot of intensity and secrecy in our house during the time that you had really intense crushes. Why do you think that we couldn't talk about it?
It's an excellent question. So one of the best parts of junior high and Crush was that it is aspirational, and by modernizing our story, we were able to allow the characters to, start to question and also act out their sexuality in a way that didn't feel bad. And obviously, as we were a product of kids that grew up in the 80s and 90s where there just was no representation, and so I just think, we didn't have anything to model our behavior or our desires against, and so it just felt like we should keep it a secret. But one of the things I really talk a lot about is that for me, sexuality and sex are interchangeable. That's how it felt as a young person, but even as an adult, I feel that way. And I feel that's why sexuality sometimes is very difficult to talk about publicly, is because it automatically conjures up imagery of sex. And I think that certainly as twins and as queer women, there's an enormous amount of like perversion around that. And I think that in our early part of our career, we were very nervous talking publicly about being gay, although we had no choice, because there was something very odd about the average journalist being like a 40-year-old man asking 18-year-old girls about their sexuality. It felt like being asked about sex. And the way that we were portrayed in the media was often sexual, as opposed to being talked about our sexuality. So they became very messy. And I think as teenagers, I know for myself, the idea of talking even with my friends about sexuality felt like talking about sex, and that wasn't something I was comfortable doing. So I don't think it was so much about keeping it from you or from anyone else. I think there's just a huge period of time in my life where it was about experimentation, and it was something that I wanted to do privately. Because I've looked at my journals, there's no repression, there's no negativity. I'm literally writing like, it's joyful. My experiences with girls in high school were joyful, and I didn't feel inner homophobia about that. It just was sort of embarrassment more about like how to say how I felt. I think probably because I didn't ever feel smitten and excited and romantic or in love with boys. I never had any chance to even use that language out loud. So to then have to do it about girls, it felt really weird. But I also think that I'm the first to admit that like there's something really exciting about having a secret. And there was something really intoxicating and exciting about having a crush on a girl and nobody knowing. And I'm not telling anyone to go back in the closet or to have secret relationships. I'm not saying love before you're out is better. I'm just saying there is a point where you have a connection with somebody and they have a connection with you, and it's just yours. And it's not being analyzed or eroded or touched by anyone else. And there's something really exciting about that. And I think Crush really gets that right. There are these really beautiful interstitials where little Tegan and Sara are feeling emotion for girls, and it's nobody else's, and it's just this really exciting place to just feel good and happy and excited or nervous. And in the case of Tegan, when DJ Kukumber ends up having a hot older girlfriend, you get to feel crushed, and that's in itself really satisfying, I think. That's what I would say about it. Here's Tegan and Sara's crushes in the book. Which it's just, I think Tillie captured those moments. Like that's sort of, yeah, they're just this like this, I hope the young people that read it, they can sort of project themselves
and
onto
all of
that.
the adults that read it, it's really, I mean, I really enjoyed it and loved reading it. Yeah.
But you did bring up our early crushes, and I do want to talk a little bit about our early crushes, Sarah and I. That's all it's
So we've been talking a lot about, obviously, when people think about crushes, they mostly think about the romantic kind of crushes, but Tegan and I have obviously discovered that we had lots of crushes. We had crushes since we were little kids, and those crushes sometimes were about, you know, I don't know, admiring someone, thinking someone was cool, wanting to be someone. But then there was also just people who made us feel funny, and a lot of those people were older. And in my case, it was Susan Sarandon in The Client. And I don't know what to say except that I desperately hoped that I would witness a murder, and that Susan Sarandon would have to spend a lot of time with me figuring out how to protect me from the people who were out to find me because I was the only witness.
And I chose Anna, is it Chomsky? Chomsky? Well, I guess she's not that big of a crush. No, but I was a kid, I don't know. She's on beat, but she was in My Girl. And I learned this recently, but this is apparently a gateway drug for a lot of lesbians from our age group. Yeah, it was confusing one for me because dad took us to Blockbuster one weekend, and we were allowed to decorate our room. We were allowed to pick out like movie posters that like movies that were already out of trend, and then you get the poster. And we got My Girl poster, and we put it up in our room at Dad's house, and I would stare at the poster and feel weird, and I didn't understand why. And I thought it was about Macaulay Culkin. Like I was like, I guess I love Macaulay Culkin, but what I really loved was the idea of being Macaulay Culkin. She took care of him. She did take care of him, and she loved him. And so what I loved was looking at the poster and I just like taking in her looking at him. And then I think I realized later that, well, we both realized later that we wished that we were Macaulay Culkin so that Anna would look at us. And then, but not the part with the bees where they die. Mom, you admitted at our last event, and I loved this, that one of your first very serious crushes, relationships was with this guy. And you guys dated.
We dated it. He was my grade 9 graduation escort. Yeah, he
Are you
was-
sad you didn't end up a hockey wife?
He probably would have been really good at that, hey? I think maybe a hockey wife. Yeah, no, I really, Brian and I grew up together. We grew up in the same hometown, and something happened in 8th grade that made me decide I really had a crush on him. And he was also,
How old is he in this picture? Do we know?
well, he's 2 years older than I am, and he was with the New York Islanders. I mean, I would say he was probably like maybe 20.
Okay, because I was gonna say, at first my eyesight is absolutely horrible. I didn't see that said New York Islanders, and I was like, that man looks 50 fucking years old. Is that how old he was when he was doing it? No, I just couldn't find a picture of him as a teen, so I just chose his hockey one.
I do have a picture of them as a teen, me and him, or he and I when we were dating. You must have missed it when you were perusing my photo albums.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Sorry.
lovely. We dated for a short period of time, but he was much more interested in hockey and talking about hockey than talking to me about what I wanted to talk about. It didn't last.
It didn't work out.
Yeah, it didn't work out.
I want to bring us into this last section, which is Q&A, and so Mom, I've put some questions out in front of you. If you would be so kind as to ask them. Thank you to everybody who submitted questions. We've been telling people this on this book tour that there's no way it takes us 7 to 12 minutes to answer one question, so we can't get to them all, but we're going to answer everything on our Substack. Our Substack is, I think we're alone now. If you haven't subscribed, please do. You can just subscribe for free. We give lots of our time and energy to the free part of Substack, but we also have a video podcast called Where Does the Good Grow if you become a paid subscriber. So if we didn't get to your question, I apologize. All right, would you do us?
So the first question is, I love how you mentioned earlier songs of yours in Crush, like Rainbow, otherwise known as This Is Everything. Are the other songs mentioned based on real songs as well, and if so, will you be releasing them?
No, everything else is fictional, and we, well, Tegan had extra time on her hands and wrote and recorded 6 beautiful songs based on the fictionalized music in Crush, and then we decided not to release it, partly because the songs are great and maybe they should just be their own project, and also because it feels like we can never just do one thing, we have to do 10 things. And so we just decided the songs are great. And so maybe, yes, they will eventually, you'll see something of them in the future.
Yeah, good answer.
What's a dream you wish you could have pursued instead of music and literature?
Well, I think that's part of the problem for me when I was in school. When I was school-aged, I had no aspirational job. I can remember a phase where I said I wanted to work at McDonald's. I remember a time that they turned me down
You
because
said MacaDonald.
MacaDonald's, and then I did an interview and they said no. And then I remember a time saying I wanted to be a veterinarian, but then I heard how many years you had to go to school, and I was like, not for me. And then there was a time where we both said we wanted to be social workers like you, and that just feels like some sort of projection, like, oh, our mom's cool and she's doing that, so we'll do that. And then music happened. So I never really had any space to think about what I would have done otherwise.
What about now?
I don't really want to do anything.
You want a kennel full of dogs.
Yeah, I think that eventually I would like to go through a phase. I think I have phases on the horizon where I own a huge piece of land and I hang out with dogs and animals. And I think that will be short-lived. I don't see myself being like get up at 5 in the morning and run a farm kind of person, but I think there may be a phase of that. I think I'm unwell. Like I am a workaholic, and I think in order for me to break some of these habits, I need to be sequestered onto a piece of land with responsibilities bigger than myself.
Okay, I have a new job for myself. I want to be so many things still. And I think I want to go back to school, get a degree. I want to do a bunch of things. But one of the jobs that I think, I don't know if this exists, but I think I want to do it, is I just go to your business or your place where you work, and I tell you what's wrong with it.
Efficiency expert. And then I help you with just a few suggestions to help make it better. So that could just be like,
You'd be really good at
like it's really fast. It's sort of like an HGTV type show. Like I can't change your world, but I can just make a few changes about like for example, we were at Dunkin' Donuts yesterday in New York City, and like one of the millions, and it was just like everything was wrong. Everything was wrong with the whole place, like where
She
people were
should
lining
have
up, how people, who
You're
was,
like a food inspector, but you're like an efficiency inspector, and you come in and you're like, we're shutting you down, this is inefficient, none of this is working.
not only is it inefficient, it was like this place was like, it was like watching
Fucking nightmare.
It was like watching every single person that walked in there was in a decent mood or was just like, I have things to do, and every single person, it was like one of those TikToks where like you're like a rat runs up to a thing and then it falls into a bucket, and then the next rat comes and it falls into the bucket, and we were just a bunch of rats at the bottom of the bucket being like, this fucking place, God! And I just thought to myself, like, I wish I could just stay here and help them. It might even only take 10 minutes, I think, with a few small changes, like line up the staff, like who, I think 5 minutes I could have figured out who was better equipped to work the till, I can tell you that right now. And then, I don't know, but that irks me, and I'm in so many unique situations, like hotels, the airports, now I'm like in a bunch of kid spaces, like I'm not saying I know exactly how to fix it, and I could be wrong. I'd be the first one to say, I'm not gonna charge you that much, but I think a few small changes, and I can make this better. And I told my therapist this, and they said that is some kind of psychological condition. I think that I know that it must be exhausting to walk through life thinking that you know better than everyone else how to make things right. But that didn't make me stop feeling that way. So either she's a bad therapist or I should actually make it a job. Fair enough.
We have time for one more question.
One more.
Choose, Mom.
Well, one is for me and one is for you. So
Then you should answer
So
a
what about
question.
you?
Okay, so as a mom.
Let me ask it for you.
Okay.
As a mom raising queer kids in Alberta, what advice would Tegan and Sara's mother give us in this intense political environment?
Yeah, that's a really tough one, guys. I mean, I think it's pretty intense politically everywhere. I think we are waking up to potentially a conservative government this morning in BC. You know, one of the things, and I have very good friends here that I worked with, and we worked in a therapeutic program with kids at risk, and you know, there were a lot of things that I learned in my time working at the Sexual Assault Center in both at a program called HERA. And one of the things that we did that was really empowering was getting the kids involved in marches, like Take Back the Night, Women's Day March, like getting out and being able to do that. And I can remember the girls taking them out, and many of their friends, I remember sort of harvesting all of them and getting them to come with us. But you guys were quite young, maybe 9, the first year that we walked and Take Back the Night when I was working at the Sexual Assault Center. And they were carrying the banner and people were calling them fucking lesbians. They were like 9.
Spitting at us.
And spitting and screaming. And this is in Calgary downtown.
Not to make a joke out of it, but I mean, we did end up being lesbians. So
You
what
did.
they did,
Your
I'm
grandmother.
just saying, they did see something in us that you didn't even notice until I was 18. So just saying.
Your grandmother,
grandma and those bigots, like that was it. They really saw the inside of me, and then people were like, "Why are you so conflicted?" And I'm like, "I don't know, because up until I was 18, the only people who really saw me were like homophobic people and grandma." So it's fair.
So I think that, you know, my partner in Vancouver has a trans kid and works on runs a group for trans parents who are dealing with young kids who are also really sort of struggling with their identities. And I just marvel at what they're doing, the kind of work that they're doing. I just can't even imagine having parenting a kid right now with a queer identity or and having to deal with that politically. I think that one of the things that we did really well in our family was we talked about everything and nothing was off the table. I think you need to talk to your kids and be honest about things and find wonderful role models for them. You know, I know we're going to close, and I'm actually going to close with something that I wrote down that Tegan had said that I thought was really, really important. Their foundation raises money, and one of the pillars of their foundation, the Tegan and Sara Foundation, is giving money to every LGBTQ focused summer camp in North America. And I think this also speaks to their books. I think that you just need to take out summer camp and put in book, and it's important. You know, I wrote it down, Tegan. It was something that you said in recent press about the Tegan and Sara Foundation, and these were your words. We get to see young people we see young people as incredibly important. They are often underestimated. We see camp as a pillar because it's a place where you can breed confidence and connection. They get to see people like them, but also older people like them. When you are young, you see your parents, you see your teachers, but at camp, you get to meet volunteers and camp counselors who serve as LGBTQ role models in their lives. It helps them see their future. True. Yeah. And so I think what I would say is help them find people who aren't speaking about things like your premier is, and help them find role models who aren't. I mean, as a straight parent, I didn't see a lot of things. It was very, very difficult, and I think the good news is that we're talking about things a lot more now, and there's a lot of opportunity to join groups and get assistance. I think support groups for kids are awesome. I've done a lot of support groups for kids, and it doesn't have to be that that you have some kind of big problem. It's just finding other kids that you can talk to. And one of my friends said to me that her grandson was seeing a psychologist, and she's also a psychologist, and he apologized to her that she wouldn't be a psychologist anymore. And I'm like, it's one of the most lovely things I heard is get your kids support, and that counselors are amazing. Our schools are filled with caring adults that can support and talk to kids about differences. There's a lot of things that you can do. Expose your kids to those things. And just keep talking at home.
I also want to say too, and I think that that's like such a big thing, and even our mom struggles with this. Your kid, I already want this about my kid, and he's like 2. And his biggest issue is just not getting enough popsicles so far. That's it. But it's okay to give your kid a safe place to have conversations and secrets from you. Like, it's okay. Like, you know,
Really important.
Mom worries that we didn't come to her and talk to her about our queerness first. But we eventually got there. You know, you don't have to be the safest place for your kid. You can find other kids or other communities or other people for them to be comfortable and safe with, and that will just make them more confident in who they are, and they'll get to the place where they can feel confident and connected to you, or, you know, like you can relate with them on that level. And I think like that's the biggest thing that I think a lot of the kids that we work with, or a lot of even the adults that we connect with the foundation, is finding community. You just need people who like look like you, feel like you, talk like you, have been through the stuff you've been through.
Yeah, build that community, and it starts with you. Yeah.
Thanks, Mom. Thank you for taking that question. Thank you so much, Wordfest, for having us. Thanks to our amazing team for getting this book out across the country. Jamie, we appreciate you so much. Thank you to our mom, Sonia, for moderating the event. I know I mentioned it earlier, but Tillie Walden, who illustrated this book, is just incredible. And so please check out her other books. And if you don't have a copy of Crush or Junior High or High School or Memoir, they're all here tonight, and we signed everything before the event. So please pick one up if you've got a young LGBTQ kid or just a young person in your life and you want to bring something home to them. We'd love that. And thanks to all of you for coming out and supporting us. I say this every single night, we get to do our job, but I feel like incredibly grateful that 26 years later, we are still doing what we love. It's the best job in the world, and we are so grateful to have so many places to share our stories and to connect with you. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it very much. I hope we'll see you guys all again. See you later. Thank you.
Oh, you know the pose, you know what you're doing. Oh, thank you so much.